Good morning, everyone. Beautiful morning as usual. And we are just under a week away from the day of Shavuot. I would say that this is the most unknown, important Jewish holiday. Would I be correct? It is one of the three festivals written in the Torah. The first festival, being Passover, which is the most known, Sukkot, not as well known, and Shavuot, which is the least known. The funny thing about Shavuot is that it's the easiest holiday. It's the holiday of cheesecake. Passover, that's so difficult, that takes so much preparation and so much work and so many rules, is more popular than the holiday of cheesecake. Go figure. That's not what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about a really difficult question. A question that it keeps on coming up. I hear it a lot from people, and maybe this is something that's come up in your mind. The question about God. Does God really care? I think a lot of young people who believe in a higher power, but believing in a higher power, does it translate to, does that higher power care about how I live? So I was reading recently in the Wall Street Journal the results of a survey regarding what percentage of young people believe in a higher power. It turns out that 1/3 of young people between the ages of 18 and 25 do believe in a higher power. In contrast, actually, to a survey conducted a few years ago, which indicated the same, only about a quarter of young people believed in a higher power. Now, many of them, the survey discussed, say that they don't like organized religion and they don't participate in formal religious institutions, but deep down they have faith. The article quoted experts, psychologists who were trying to explain what caused this damage. Why are young people suddenly discovering a faith in a higher power? And they argued that in recent years, especially with the global pandemic, people have lost a sense of personal security. And they've turned to a higher power as a result. Often, as they said, this is what happens when people lose a sense of personal security, they turn to a higher power. Maybe there's some truth in this, but what we're seeing is a trend shift among young people. And I think for those people who are of faith, it's good news. In general, human beings naturally believe there's a creator of the world unless they're convinced or educated or, for lack of better words, brainwashed otherwise. It's part of our DNA. We naturally have a strong sense that the world is not a jungle, and there's a certain entity responsible for governing the world. But here comes my question and the crux of what I want to talk about today. Many people believe in a creator of the world, but does this creator really care about what we do? Does it truly matter to this creator what I eat? Does it make a difference to the creator if I do a mitzvah, if I put on tefillin, if I light Shabbat candles? Does it really matter? A person can truly believe in the existence of a higher power and have total faith, yet still grapple with this question. It's not a question of faith. It's clear to this individual that the higher power exists. The question is whether this higher power has any concern for its creations. Does it truly matter to the higher power what happens to animals, what happens to creatures? God has a vast universe to manage, and we're just a minuscule part. We're just, as Mark Twain said, a dim puff in the blaze of the Milky Way. So my little actions, what I do, is that so important in the grand scheme of 8 billion people? I think there's another question that I want to bring up as well. This has bothered me for a while. King Solomon wrote a few books, and one of the most poetic and soul-stirring of his books is the book of Kohelet, Ecclesiastes. And he says in Ecclesiastes that God is in heaven and you are on earth, so let your words be few. God is in heaven and you are on earth, so let your words be few. The higher power is in the highest spiritual realms, while we, small little dim puffs, small human beings, we're here on earth. So, is it really possible to communicate with God? It's true that humans are capable of doing great things. We swim faster than any fish. We soar higher than any eagle. We dig faster than any mole. Human music is more beautiful than a bird's song. But still, our accomplishments seem inconsequential in comparison to the greatness of the Creator. So, I'll sum it all up like this. Is there a connection between human beings and a higher power? The question is fundamental. The higher power is infinite. Humans are finite. And it seems impossible to establish a relationship between something finite and something infinite. If you have $10 and your friend has $100, then the moment you gain an additional dollar, you get closer to your friend who has 100. But if you have $1,000,000 and your friend has limitless dollars, no matter how many dollars you accumulate, you're never going to get closer to your friend. Limitless, even that word, we don't have a word that describes limitless. We have to say what it isn't, not what it is, because we don't understand it, because we are confined by time and space. God is infinite, while we are limited beings. That's the reality of our circumstance. So how can us limited by time and space establish that connection with the limitless? This gets us into the conversation about Shavuot. There's a holiday that's coming up next week, Shavuot. It's a holiday of which, since Passover, we've been counting every day. We count from the day we left Egypt, 49 days, until we reached Mount Sinai and God gave us the Torah. It was an amazing, powerful event with thunder and lightning. I call it the greatest fireworks show of all time. And then right there God gave the Torah to the people. And I think the event of the giving of the Torah resolves both of these questions. It's the moment when God descended to Mount Sinai and made contact with humanity, instructing us on how to conduct ourselves. That was the moment that we understood that clearly the higher power communicates with us and cares about what we do. So, from the perspective of humanity as a whole, this event was more important than the exodus from Egypt. This event was more important than the splitting of the Red Sea. Those were personal miracles for the people during that time. But the giving of the Torah signified a connection between the limitless creator and all of humanity for all time. Let me give you an example. In New Mexico, there are miles and miles of highly sensitive antennas. These antennas are directed towards space, and they're meant to listen to all transmissions from space. So let's say that one day they receive a transmission from a distant star, and a message that someone transmitted to someone else about a laundry list. The moment we're going to hear something like that, our entire worldview will change. Suddenly, it's going to become clear, science fiction, that there's life on a distant planet or a distant star. But what is exactly said in the message may not matter as much. All they're going to care about is that they heard something, and that's all that's important. And this exact point is expressed in the Midrash. It says that until the giving of the Torah, there was very limited communication between God and the people and the world in general. The Midrash uses a parable from 1900 years ago to describe this. It says it's likened to a king who decreed that the Romans should not descend to Syria, that the Syrians should not ascend to Rome. So, similar, when God created the world, God decreed, the heavens are for the Lord, and the earth is given to the human. When God desired to give the Torah, God nullified the initial decree and declared the lower ones shall ascend to the higher ones, and the higher ones shall descend to the lower ones. And that began with the verse, and God descended upon Mount Sinai, which is what the Torah says, that at the giving of the Torah, God descended upon Mount Sinai. And during the giving of the Torah, God established a line of connection between an infinite, limitless God and the limited world. The infinite God turned to us and gave us an opportunity to communicate with the infinite, gave us the opportunity to have a conversation through those antennas with a distant star. He provided us with 613 phone numbers through which we can reach the infinite. These 613 phone numbers are called mitzvot. Mitzvot comes from the word savta. They're connectors. They're literally phones. When we fulfill the right commandment at the right time, the way that we were instructed to do it, we establish a connection and a bound with the limitless, with the boundless. God made the first move. The next step, as the Midrash continues, is, and Moses, he said, ascend to the Lord. And on that very day, immediately after the giving of the Torah. Moses ascended Mount Sinai and stayed there for 40 days. And it was during that time that he received the tablets of the covenant, the 10 Commandments, the two beautiful sapphire tablets upon which the 10 Commandments were inscribed. But then something happened. And I think it's an important note. After Moses descended, the greatest sin, the sin of the golden calf, happened. And as a result, Moses broke the sapphire tablets. And eventually, God gave Moses a second set of tablets. I don't know if you know when that happened. When did Moses receive the second tablets? If you follow the chronology, Moses went up 40 days. So if Moses goes up 40 days on the 7th of Sivan, 40 days later is going to be the 17th of Tammuz. And then Moses went back. 17th of Tammuz was the day that the golden calf happened. Moses goes back and comes back before the 1st of Elul, and then goes back up the 1st of Elul. And do you know what 40 days later is? What 10th of Tishrei? What is the 10th of Tishrei? Moses comes down with the second set of tablets on the 10th of Tishrei, which is the holiest day of the Jewish calendar, on Yom Kippur. Now, if you're hearing this for the first time, why didn't you know that? It's the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. The reason is because when Moses came down with the second tablets, he did it quietly. He entered the Israelite camp and placed the tablets inside the Ark of Covenant without anyone seeing, without anyone hearing. It was discreet. It was a private act. Moses was discreet. Rashi explains this. It was because the first tablets were presented with such fanfare that the evil eye, as Rashi explains, gained control over them. In the second round, God instructed Moses to do it no fanfare, quietly, no fireworks show, nothing too exciting, because there's nothing more beautiful than modesty. The event of the giving of the Torah was a monumental occasion. It was a global production on an unprecedented scale. Millions of people gathered there to witness the divine revelation on Mount Sinai, the holiday of Shavuot, next week. There was thunder, there was lightning, the great fireworks show. There was a thick cloud on the mountain, a very loud shofar sound. This is how the Torah describes it. The entire Mount Sinai was smoking, and the mountain trembled greatly. The Torah actually continues to describe all the people perceived the thunder and the lightning flashes, the sound of the shofar and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they trembled and stood from afar. The book of Deuteronomy actually adds darkness, cloud, and thick darkness. The Midrash adds that the whole world shook when they heard the voice of the infinite, of God. It was a tremendous, tremendous event. And as a result, Rashi says it caused the evil eye to manifest. Everyone was envious of the Israelites for having the privilege of such a profound revelation. And all of this ultimately led to the breaking of the tablets. And so therefore, on the second occasion, God instructed Moses to do it quietly, saying, there's nothing more beautiful than modesty. I'll end off with this. The Rebbe raises an interesting question. At first glance, if you look at it, it doesn't make any sense. God knew that the commotion would lead to breaking the tablets. God is infinite. God obviously knew. So why didn't God just give them secretly and with modesty from the start? If we're all so concerned about the evil inclination, why the commotion in the first place? The Rebbe explains that the receiving of the Torah needed to be a joyous occasion. It needed to be dramatic, so it would arouse a sense of celebration among the people. And of course, God knew such noise could lead to negative consequences. But the giving of a Torah was such an incredibly significant and transformative event that it required a grand commotion. It had to be accompanied by the loudest noise imaginable, so that the entire world would know and would hear that there's a God. It was so important because it was the very moment when the creator of the universe came down from the heavens to speak to us finite human beings. It was the moment that told us that our actions matter. Our limited little actions matter. 613 ways of connection. They all matter. That the infinite creator desires a relationship and a connection with us. And Shavuot, that is the day when the connection was formed. That is the day that it all changed. That is the day that we were able to truly, truly experience what it means to be connected to the infinite. And so today, as we prepare for Shavuot, we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to learn, and maybe perhaps why Shavuot is not a popular holiday is because today it needs to be a holiday with modesty, without the fanfare. The fanfare happened. The relationship happened. It's also a day that we can reaffirm our relationship with God, with a higher power. And it's a day that I like to say that we should take on. There's 613 options, that we should take on one mitzvah and say, I want a connection with the infinite. I want a connection with a higher power. And this is the way I'm going to do it. 613 is too much of anything. But one is not too much. With that, I wish you all a beautiful and a wonderful and a very happy Shavuot.